The Nevada sun was merciless. It pressed down on the cracked tarmac like an iron fist, baking the desert air into a shimmering mirage. The roar of jet engines rolled across Thunderbolt Air Base, shaking loose bolts, rattling windows, and vibrating deep inside the chest of anyone standing too close. And under the shadow of an F-16 Fighting Falcon, Emma Rivera worked in silence. Her sleeves were blackened with grease. Sweat ran in steady rivulets down her temples. The wrench in her hand clicked and groaned as she twisted against the stubborn metal of a flap actuator. Her knuckles were raw, skin etched with small scars, marks of a woman who'd lived too long among unforgiving machines. From the hangar's shade, a semicircle of pilots lounged with cold drinks in hand, their laughter slicing through the roar of engines. "Listen, grease monkey," Captain Robert Hale's smug voice rang out. "If you ever touch a real stick, I'll personally call the medics myself." The men around him erupted in brutal laughter. It was sharp, cutting, the kind of laughter that wasn't shared. It was aimed. Emma's jaw flexed once. Then she kept working. "Rat of the hangar," another voice chimed in. "Dreams of the cockpit? The only glass you'll touch is the canopy you polish." The taunt spilled over her like oil on concrete. She didn't rise to it. She never did. Because Emma had learned one simple truth on this scorched flight line. Arguments didn't keep jets in the air. Work did. Still, their words burned. The flight line reeked of jet fuel and scorched steel. The heat warped the air above the aircraft, turning Falcons into ghostly mirages as they shimmered in the desert haze. Every sound seemed magnified here. The crack of tools on metal, the hiss of hydraulics, the endless thunder of afterburners. And then, the sound of footsteps. Not boots, but polished Oxfords. Precise. Deliberate. A sound that commanded attention before the man even appeared. Colonel John Morrison stepped into the sunlight. He was in his early 50s, his uniform so sharply pressed it could have cut glass. His reputation had reached Emma long before his shadow stretched across the tarmac. He was a man who demanded precision, loyalty, and perfection. Nothing less. Emma slid out from beneath the jet, grease streaking her coveralls, and snapped to attention. Sweat trickled down her face, but her eyes never wavered. "And you are?" Morrison's voice was flat. Not curious. Not impressed. Just flat. "Staff Sergeant Emma Rivera, sir," she replied. A pause. Too long. Long enough to sting. Then Morrison's eyes narrowed. "Why is someone like you working on critical systems for an F-16? His words were knives. "This isn't a motorcycle repair shop." Emma's throat tightened, but her voice stayed even. "I'm lead technician on this airframe, sir. Running post-flight checks on a flap actuator." Morrison didn't nod, didn't even acknowledge her words. Instead, his gaze fell on her toolbox. Without asking, he reached in and pulled out a small, black, leather-bound book. He flipped it open. His expression didn't change, but Emma's heart sank. Page after page of neatly inked hours. Her flight log. Civilian lessons paid for with doubled shifts, midnight hours, and scraped-together savings. The story of her climb toward a certification she'd never dared to admit out loud. A diary? Morrison scoffed. "No, sir. My flight log." He snapped it shut. The sound was louder than it should have been. Mechanics have no business pretending to be pilots. His voice cut through the hangar like a blade. "This stays with me." And just like that, he tucked it beneath his arm, a captured flag. "Get back to work." Emma's chest burned. Her hands trembled, just for a moment, before steadying on her wrench. That was the day the sabotage began. Her tools vanished, only to reappear hours later behind equipment racks. Reports she filed never reached command. Someone poured grit into her water bottle. Tiny acts. Small cuts. But the message was deafening. "You don't belong here." By the second week, the whispers spread. New airmen passed her with sidelong glances, as though she were walking cautionary tale, a reminder of the unspoken rule no one dared put in writing. The cockpit was not for her kind. Emma ate alone, worked alone. At night, she walked the perimeter fence, staring at the floodlit falcons gleaming in the darkness like silent predators. She traced the outlines of their wings with her eyes, wondering if she'd ever feel the wind beneath her own. But fate doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. One morning, as the sun bled across the horizon and heat shimmered over the desert, Emma heard something that made her blood run cold. A sharp, metallic clack. The sound carried across the flight line from an F-16, where a young pilot rushed through his pre-flight checks. He was moving too fast, flipping through his checklist without care, testing parts with a hand that was too heavy, too careless. Her eyes locked on the flap actuator, the very one she'd worked on. That clack wasn't the sound of a healthy system. It was the sound of fatigue, of metal pushed past tolerance, of failure waiting to happen. Emma's rag dropped to the floor. Her boots carried her forward before she even thought. "Captain," she called, her voice steady but urgent. "Hold up. I need to look at that actuator again." The pilot frowned. "It's fine, Sergeant." I followed the checklist. "I heard the actuator pop under load," she pressed. "That's not normal." His jaw tightened. "With respect, Sergeant, you're not cleared to re-inspect my bird. We're on a launch window." Emma's voice cut sharper now. "If that part fails mid-flight, you won't have a launch window to worry about." Before he could answer, another shadow fell over them. Colonel Morrison. His voice was already loaded with suspicion. "What's going on here?" "Nothing, sir," the pilot said quickly. "Just about to taxi." "Sir," Emma tried, "I believe there's a defect in the actuator. I need clearance too." "Enough." Morrison's hand cut through the air like a blade. "You have your assignment, Sergeant. Return to your post." Emma froze. Her heart thundered. She wanted to scream, but instead, she swallowed the fire in her throat. From a hangar, she watched Falcon 415 taxi out, sunlight flashing across its canopy as its afterburners roared to life. Dust shook loose from the rafters. And deep down, Emma knew something was about to go terribly wrong. And she was right, because before the day ended, Emma would hear a desperate call across the comms, one that would change everything. The afternoon schedule slid into place like clockwork. Jets lined up. Ground crews peeled away. The desert trembled under the push of afterburners. From the shadow of Hangar 6, Emma watched Falcon 415 taxi toward the runway. The same airframe she'd argued over that morning. The one with the sound she couldn't forget. Heat shimmered above the asphalt. The horizon wavered. Her pulse did too. A routine tower update should have come next. It didn't. Then a clipped voice cut through the air. "Eagle 7, confirm status." Silence. "Eagle 7, say again." Emma's stomach dropped. Her rag slid from her hand. Static hissed through the speaker. Fragments broke free like ice flows. Flap, negative response, primary comms. The rest died in a wash of noise. She stepped toward the hangar door. Stopped. Her breath misted the inside of her mask. She pulled it down. Then she ran. Boots on metal stairs. Hands on railings gone hot from the sun. Wind pushing against her shoulders as if to say, "Don't." Have you ever felt that strange pull? The one that drags you forward when everyone expects you to stay put? Emma took the service route toward the tower. She knew every corridor, every panel labeled with military neatness. Her master keys clinked at her hip. She moved like she'd done this 1,000 times. She hadn't. But the body sometimes knows what the mind won't admit. She slipped to the comms room. The air was colder here. It smelled like dust, ozone, and fear. Racks of electronics blinked in weak rhythm. Status lights fluttered like a failing heartbeat. The backup array, the one meant to save the day when everything else failed, stuttered, coughed, and gasped. A single black lead sat crooked. Its copper shielding was scorched. It had arced against the frame. A near miss. A silent killer. "Power down this module," Emma said to a startled tech who'd spun at the sight of her. "Now." "That'll drop our last link to Eagle 7, he protested. "It's not a link. It's a ghost." 30 seconds. She held up 3 fingers. 30. He swallowed. Flipped the switch. The room fell into a deeper silence. She could hear her own pulse. She could hear the faint warble of jets above the desert. She could hear the decision she was making, taking shape in the quiet. Emma stripped the burned cable, knots of wire in her fingers. She cut clean, crimped fresh. Sweat rolled down her back beneath her coveralls. The tool felt heavy. The seconds felt heavier. She reseated the lead and braced it with a small, improvised clip from her kit, metal on metal, a fix that would hold because it had to. Power. The tech restored the module. The rack woke with a low whine. Lights stabilized. A steady green line held fast. The static on the speaker thinned, and, like a voice surfacing from deep water, a man finally broke through. Tower, this is Eagle 7. Breathless. Strained. Fuel critical. Controls unstable. Emma didn't celebrate. She didn't breathe. She grabbed a spare headset and climbed the last set of stairs to the glass-walled tower. Voices collided the moment she appeared. Controllers leaned over scopes. A supervisor barked headings. Colonel John Morrison stood at the center, jaw set, eyes narrowed, rage ready. Staff Sergeant Rivera, he said, venom soft. You are far from your post. I reconnected your backup channel, she said, already moving past him. You've got partial comms. You had no authorization. You want him down alive or not? Silence. For a heartbeat, the entire room paused. Even the desert seemed to hold its breath. Morrison didn't move to stop her. He didn't nod either. He just watched. Emma slid on the headset. Hands steady. Voice steady. Eagle 7. This is Thunderbolt Tower on secondary. Do you copy? Static hissed. Then, read you barely. Flight controls are degraded. Left flap not responding. Fuel's in the red. Emma closed her eyes for half a second. In that half second, she pictured the actuator. She pictured the maintenance path. The manual backup. The safety she'd argued for. The one no one had practiced. She opened her eyes. Eagle 7, name and rank. Captain Michael Reyes. A brittle laugh. The new guy. Michael, I'm Staff Sergeant Emma Rivera. I worked your airframe. We're going to take it slow. Copy. Copy slow. In the room, someone whispered, she's not a controller. Someone else whispered back, she's the reason he can hear us. Emma didn't look at them. Michael, your primary hydraulics aren't giving you flap authority. We'll try the manual bypass. You see a red guard near your right knee, marked AUX flap release. A beat. Found it. Good. It's 2-stage. You'll push and hold 3 seconds. Then you'll bring speed down by 10s. Don't chase it. Nibble it. Nibble, he said. Copy. On my mark, 3, 2, 1, hold. Silence, except for the faint rasp of his breath in her ear. Release. The controller beside Emma pointed at the screen. Speed is bleeding. Another voice. He's high and hot. Crosswinds building. Michael, Emma said, we're shifting you to runway 2. Morrison shot her a look. She met it. Didn't flinch. You'll catch the arresting cable with your hook. You get 1 try. We'll make it count. Arresting hook, Michael repeated. Haven't done that outside a sim. Then pretend it's the best sim of your life. Copy. Wind shear flashed on the board. Alarms flickered. Someone muttered a prayer. Have you ever noticed how loud a room gets when no one's talking? Chairs creak. Paper breathes. Hope makes its own noise. Emma spoke low, even like a friend guiding someone down a dark stairwell. Trim right. Counter the drift. Don't fight the jet, lead it. You're not wrestling a bull. You're training a dog. Michael's breathing steadied. Right trim, speed at 205, 200, 190. Good. Nibble to 180. Hook armed. Hook armed. Flaps are partial. Nose high. You're long. That's fine. Don't dive. Let distance do its work. The runway lights burned through the haze like a string of pearls. Heat shimmered. The F-16 approached in a long, dirty glide. Altitude, Emma said. 150, 120. Now, she said, calm as a secret. Drop the hook. A metallic thunk echoed through the cockpit audio. Hook is down. You're on center. Hold it, hold it. Everybody in the tower leaned, as if their bodies could push his jet onto the numbers. The jet met asphalt. A hard kiss. Tires squealed. The hook snagged the cable with a whip crack that cut through the room. The aircraft lurched. Everything shook. Momentum bled out like heat from a burn. Then stillness. Tower. Michael's voice frayed in light. Eagle 7 down safe. For a second, nobody moved. Then the room erupted. Cheers, claps, exhale after exhale. A controller wiped tears with the heel of her palm. Someone slapped Emma on the shoulder. Someone else laughed, wild and relieved. Emma took off the headset and set it gently on the console, like it held a heartbeat. Her knees almost gave. She didn't let them. Across the glass, fire crews rolled. The jet sat small and quiet against the runway, like a bird surprised to find itself alive. Emma turned for the stairwell. Sergeant. Morrison's voice stopped her. She turned. He was studying her the way men study storms, respect mixed with fear. He opened his mouth, closed it. The words wouldn't come. Emma nodded once. Not a bow, not defiance. Just a simple, I heard you call my name. Then she walked. Down the steps. Out of the cool. Back into the heat that made everything shimmer. On the tarmac, the world resumed its normal noise. Carts whining, radios chirping, jets coughing awake. But some notes didn't fit anymore. The laughter from earlier had gone soft, almost apologetic. Almost. Emma moved past them without looking. She didn't need their faces to know what they were thinking. Have you ever won something you weren't supposed to even touch? She reached hangar 6, leaned both palms on the cool edge of a workbench, and let the silence pool. Her hands trembled once, then stopped. She picked up a wrench, because that was who she was. Behind her, the base's PA clicked. A calm, careful voice announced routine business, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. It was extraordinary. Everyone knew. But there's a cost to crossing lines. Emma felt it in the way heads turned, in the speed of new whispers, in the heavy footfalls that climbed, again, toward the tower for a meeting she hadn't been invited to. She wiped her hands, straightened. The day was not over. The story wasn't either. Because saving a life would only be the beginning. Tomorrow, they'd need someone to blame, or someone to follow. Which do you think they'll choose? The desert had grown quieter that evening. Not in sound. The engines still thundered, generators still hummed, but in something subtler. A shift in the way people looked at Emma Rivera when she passed. The jeers had evaporated. Laughter had dulled. In its place came silence, cautious and heavy. Emma didn't chase their eyes. She didn't want their stares. She wanted air. So she walked. Past the rows of gleaming F-16s. Past the hangars glowing amber in the sinking sun. She stopped only when the perimeter fence pressed its cool chain-link shadow across her palms. On the horizon, floodlights washed the runway in silver. The jet she had saved, Falcon 415, sat under armed guard, a monument of metal and survival. For the first time in days, Emma let herself breathe. Morning came with sharp edges. The Nevada sky was too blue, the sun too bright, the air too dry. In the assembly hall, rows of uniforms faced forward, posture stiff. Every rank from airman to colonel was there, shoulders squared, waiting. At the front, Captain Michael Reyes stood behind the podium, the man she had guided from death to asphalt. His hands still shook faintly, though he hid them against the lectern. His voice cracked once, then steadied. Eagle 7 went up for a routine training flight. Midway through, I lost flap control. Comms dropped. I was out of fuel, out of options, and out of time. He paused, his gaze sweeping the hall until it landed on her. And then someone came on the line. Not a controller, not a pilot, a mechanic. Whispers rippled through the ranks. Michael raised his voice above them. Staff Sergeant Emma Rivera. She knew my bird better than I did. She walked me through a manual override I had never even trained. I am alive because of her. This base is not writing a condolence letter tonight because of her. A hush spread deeper than silence. Emma felt the weight of it pressing into her shoulders. I have filed a formal recommendation, Michael continued, for Sergeant Rivera to receive the Air Force Commendation Medal. And beyond that, his jaw tightened, then released. I am recommending her immediate entry into officer training." The room stirred like water hit by stone. Heads turned, some approving, some skeptical, some angry. From the shadows at the side, Colonel Morrison stood with arms crossed. His eyes gave nothing away. That night, Emma sat in her quarters, the small space smelling of oil and detergent. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. Her logbook was gone, taken by Morrison. A knock cut through the quiet. She opened the door to find him standing there, spine straight as ever, the black leather book tucked beneath his arm. "Staff Sergeant," he said, voice low. "I was wrong." Emma blinked. She wasn't sure she'd heard him correctly. "My judgment was flawed," Morrison continued. He extended the logbook. She took it, fingers brushing against its worn edges as though it had returned from war. "You'll report to the training office at 0800, he said. Then, softer, almost reluctant, "Don't waste it." And just like that, he was gone. Emma shut the door. The logbook lay heavy in her hands. Her hours, her sacrifice, her dream, all pressed into the pages of that small book. She sat down, opened to the first entry, and saw the shaky ink of her earliest flight. A rented Cessna. Dawn light. Fear wrapped in exhilaration. She smiled, just barely, then closed the book and set it on her nightstand like a compass waiting for dawn. The training field was brutal. Not cruel, but mercilessly honest. Scorched asphalt strips stretched like scars across the desert. The control tower was skeletal, its radios rattling with every gust of wind. Classrooms were prefab boxes, hot in the morning, freezing at night. Emma stood in a fresh flight suit, her logbook clipped to her board. The visor of her helmet reflected the sun. She was no longer just a mechanic. She was a candidate. The first drill was simple on paper. Takeoff, pattern flight, precision landing. In the back seat of her T-38 trainer, the instructor decided to test her resolve. Halfway through the final turn, he cut the engine. Engine failure. Respond. Emma didn't freeze. She didn't flinch. Her voice stayed calm. Throttle back. Rudder compensate. Trim adjustment. The jet steadied. Field in sight. Land in 800 feet. The instructor didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was its own verdict. Emma guided the nose down. The wheels hit asphalt, firm but centered. The jet rolled to a stop with 100 feet to spare. When the canopy opened, hot wind rushed in. She unlatched her helmet, eyes hard, face calm. She'd passed the first test. But the sky wasn't done with her yet. In the weeks to come, Emma would face challenges that no checklist could prepare her for. Formation drills, live-fire runs, and a final test designed to break even the strongest. Would the desert claim her or crown her? Weeks blurred into each other. Days of scorching sunlight. Nights of bone-cutting desert cold. For Emma Rivera, officer training wasn't just about flying. It was about being broken down, piece by piece, to see what was left. The field had no patience for weakness. Every mistake was magnified by a cockpit that punished hesitation. Every drill was an examination of her mind, her nerves, her will. And Emma refused to blink first. It started with 4 ships. For aircraft, flying as one, only feet apart at speeds that turned the air itself into a weapon. The first time Emma slotted into formation, sweat soaked her gloves. Her helmet pressed down heavy, as though it knew she wasn't supposed to be here. The roar of engines filled her ears, but it was the silence between the radio calls that clawed at her chest. "Lead on me." 2 copy. 3 copy. Emma swallowed. 4 copy. They rose in diamond formation, the desert floor falling away until only sky remained. When the lead aircraft suddenly rolled out, simulating a hit, Emma's heart froze. For half a second, time fractured. She saw the empty space, yawning, waiting. Then instinct took over. She slid her jet into the gap, lined her nose, and locked onto the target without waiting for orders. Her finger tightened on the trigger. The simulated missile screamed across the screen. Splash 1. Her voice was steady, calm. Her instructor's silence in the other seat spoke volumes. Emma had just proven she wasn't only surviving here. She belonged. But the higher she climbed, the more resistance rose around her. Notes disappeared from her locker. Flight gear was misplaced. A fuel chart she had carefully prepared was swapped with outdated data. Small things. Petty things. But in this world, small errors meant death. Some nights, she lay awake in her bunk, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind batter the prefab walls. Questions tore at her. Why me? Why now? What if Morrison was right? What if I didn't belong? But then she'd reach for her logbook, thumb across the pages. Hours inked in sweat and exhaustion. Each line a promise she'd made to herself. And promises were not meant to be broken. By the third week, the drills grew harder. Engines flamed out mid-flight without warning. Radios cut to static. Control sticks stiffened in her grip. The instructors threw chaos at her like stones, trying to see which one would break her first. One afternoon, halfway through a steep climb, her board lit up. Engine fire. Red light. Alarms screaming. Simulated, the instructor said flatly, arms crossed. Emma's pulse surged, but her hands didn't shake. Fuel shut off, she barked, flipping the switch. Bottle armed. Eject envelope standing by. The fire light blinked, then dimmed. She pulled the jet into a clean glide, choosing a landing strip with the precision of someone who had stared at maps until they blurred. Wheels kissed asphalt. The plane rolled to a stop. Not bad, the instructor said, but Emma caught the faintest crack in his mask. He hadn't expected her to be that fast. The last test wasn't announced. It just happened. Emma was strapped into a modified test platform. Controls unfamiliar. System strange. A Frankenstein's monster of parts and electronics cobbled together to challenge her. Halfway through her flight, the screen lit up. Intermittent actuator signal loss. Her stomach twisted. The sound echoed from her memory. The clack she had heard that morning weeks ago. The one no one else had believed. Now it was back. Only this time, she was alone at 20,000 feet. She ran diagnostics, hands moving without hesitation. Inputs flickered. Data dropped, returned, dropped again. She isolated the fault, rerouted the circuit, adjusted controls manually. The jet stuttered, dipped, fought her. She fought back, not with force, but with control, with patience, with the calm of a mechanic who knew machines didn't hate you. They just needed to be understood. By the time she brought the bird down, the glitch had stabilized. Her landing was firm, steady, undeniable. When the canopy lifted, she was drenched in sweat. But her smile, small, tired, defiant, was unshakable. Later, in the briefing room, Colonel Morrison slid a small box across the table. Inside gleamed the insignia of a second lieutenant. Staff Sergeant Emma Rivera, he said, voice stripped of arrogance now. Welcome to the officer corps. For the first time since she'd met him, his eyes carried something different. Not disdain, not suspicion, something closer to respect. Behind her, Captain Michael Reyes stepped forward. He pinned the bars to her collar, his grin wide, his voice quiet. Lieutenant, you've got lead next month in the joint exercise. Don't make me regret it. Emma's reply was simple, soft. Wouldn't dream of it, Captain. That night, she walked to the far end of the runway. Sodium lights flickered behind her. Ahead, the desert swallowed the horizon in starlight. The sky loomed vast. Waiting. She thought of the laughter, the sabotage, the endless hands trying to shove her back into the shadows. And then she thought of a headset, the trembling voice of a pilot about to die, the silence that had broken when her own words filled the void. She touched the bars on her collar. Not decorations. Proof. Emma Rivera wasn't waiting for permission anymore. She had earned the sky. But what comes after the dream is won. Because with her new rank came new storms, bigger, darker, and deadlier than the desert heat could ever be. Would the sky embrace her or break her? The ceremony had ended hours ago. The applause had faded. The papers had been signed. The insignia gleamed quietly on Emma Rivera's collar. But Emma herself, she lingered on the edge of the flight line long after the others had gone. The tarmac hummed under the sodium lights, a river of asphalt stretching into the darkness. Above her, the stars shone so close it felt like she could climb into them. She closed her eyes and let the desert wind wrap around her. She could still hear it, the desperate static of Michael Reyes calling out, the silence that had dared her to step forward, the voice she had found inside herself that day. Now, silence felt different. It wasn't absence. It was possibility. The next morning came with no ceremony, no announcement. Just an order. Lieutenant Rivera, you're flying lead in today's joint exercise. Emma pulled on her helmet. The visor reflected her own eyes back at her, calm, steady, defiant. The flight suit hugged her frame, her gloves tightened. Her boots clicked against the ladder as she climbed into the cockpit. The F-35 roared awake beneath her, power trembling through the metal like a living thing. Her bird. Her command. Thunderbolt lead, you are clear for takeoff. Emma's hands moved over the throttle with practiced ease. The runway stretched out ahead, white lines glowing under the morning sun. Her pulse matched the engine's rising pitch. And then she released. The jet thundered forward, the ground fell away, and she was airborne. Wind rushed. The desert dropped beneath her. Sky opened wide. For the first time, Emma wasn't watching from below. She wasn't guiding from the shadows. She wasn't waiting for someone else to hand her permission. She was where she had always belonged, at the front. The exercise wasn't designed to be easy. Enemy simulations pressed in, red blips multiplying on her radar. Her squadron's voices filled her ears. 2, on your left. 3, I've got contact. Lead, what's the call? All of them looking to her. Her. The mechanic who once ate alone in the hangar. The grease-stained sergeant no one believed in. Emma steadied her breath. The jet obeyed her touch like it knew her heart. Hold formation, she said calm. 2, cover the flank. 3, climb for altitude. 4 on me. Missile streaked. Simulated kills lit her screen. One by one, the red blips faded. The desert echoed with a roar of victory. When the exercise ended, the controllers spoke the words Emma had longed to hear. Thunderbolt lead, mission successful. That night, Emma walked to the farthest edge of the runway, out where the lights gave up and the desert swallowed everything in black. She thought of the path behind her, the jeers, the sabotage, the silence that once threatened to smother her. She thought of her logbook, heavy with hours carved out of exhaustion and sacrifice. She thought of every wrench turned, every blister earned, every word she never let them take from her. And now she thought of path ahead. The sky was not still. It was not safe. It was never given. It was earned, moment by moment, choice by choice, climb by climb. Emma Rivera stood with her new bars, catching the faint glow of starlight, not as decoration, but as weight. The kind of weight you carry with pride. Behind her, a jet screamed into the night, afterburners lighting the desert like dawn. She closed her eyes and let the sound fill her chest. This was what she was meant for, not just to fly, to lead. Maybe you've been there too, standing at the edge of your own runway, hearing voices tell you that you don't belong. Maybe you're there now, holding on to a dream that others can't see. Emma's story is a reminder. You don't always have to shout to be heard. You don't always have to fight to prove your worth. Sometimes, all you have to do is keep moving. One check, one climb, one landing at a time. The runway is waiting. The sky is waiting. The only question left is, when it's your turn to fly, will you take it?